So, after a brutal day in court in the New York Attorney General civil fraud trial, on the last day of trial, closing arguments where Donald Trump ranted and raved and gave his own mini closing statement or summation where he just started yelling at the judge and yelling at the New York Attorney General, and then stormed out and went to one of the properties he has an interest in at 40 Wall Street and held this weird press conference with Alina Habba. One of the first things that Donald Trump then did was to talk about E. Jean Carroll, the victim who he has been adjudicated to have raped by a federal jury in New York, by the jury as well as confirmed by the judge. And Donald Trump spent the time creating further liability for himself, tormenting the victim, who a jury and judge has already found in the civil case that he has sexually abused and also defamed. So Donald Trump has the next defamation trial in E. Jean Carroll coming up in just a few days. Donald Trump has done everything to try to avoid this case from going to trial. He's filed appeal after appeal and all these motions to stay and stop the proceedings with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. They've rejected him, and now we have this trial where I've said that Donald Trump could be facing a Rudy Giuliani-style verdict, which means, as we had previously predicted here on the MeidasTouch Network, on or around February 1st, I think we're going to get back the judgment, a final judgment by Justice Arthur Engoron in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. I think Donald Trump's going to be hit with another verdict for tens of millions of dollars, even potentially in excess of $100 million. But I think it's probably more like $25, $30, $40 million in the next E. Jean Carroll defamation trial. And one of the key pieces of evidence that's going to be introduced are Donald Trump's own words, where he has further defamed E. Jean Carroll after a jury has already found him liable and responsible for both the underlying rape as well as defamation. So this upcoming E. Jean Carroll trial in federal court in New York is just about damages. How much damages? Will there be punitive damages? And how much are the punitive damages as well? Well, E. Jean Carroll has the same expert that was used by Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, a incredible professor from Northwestern University, and her name is Professor Humphreys, and she's testifying on behalf of E. Jean Carroll at this trial for damages. And then you're going to have the punitive damages stage. And then one of the things that E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, incredible lawyer by the name of Roberta Kaplan, will argue to the jury is that E. Jean Carroll's damages have been multiplied by Donald Trump's continuing defamation of her. And one of the factors, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in fact, one of the main factors that you need to consider is to send a message. One of the things that punitive damages do, they punish. They're punishment damages. And so you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, need to punish Donald Trump because he's a menace. After already have been found to have raped E. Jean Carroll, he's now tormenting his victim. One of the ways he's tormenting his victim is, you can see it right here. Take a look at this. On Donald Trump's social media, post after post, post after post, defaming E. Jean Carroll. As I've said before, if somebody posted like this on any topic, football, golf, bird watching, I don't know, whatever the topic is, something that was not even despicable and disgusting, but posted so frequently, you'd be like, that's really worrisome behavior. Donald Trump is doing this to torment the victim who a judge and jury has found that he sexually assaulted. Just think about that. That's already been found. That's already an outcome. So that's what Donald Trump's doing on his social media on a regular basis, and the jury will see that conduct and behavior. Also, the jury's going to see this press conference that Donald Trump held with Alina Habba after the New York Attorney General's civil fraud trial got completed. Donald Trump stormed out, and said these horrible things about E. Jean Carroll there. Take a look at what Donald Trump said the same day he stormed out, following some weird closing statement that he gave in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. He talks about E. Jean Carroll. Play this clip.
Tuesday, are you going to be back in court for the E. Jean Carroll case on Wednesday?
Yeah, well, that's another one. That's sponsored by Reid Hoffman and some Democrat operatives. I never saw this woman in my life other than to have a picture with her and her husband, John Johnson, a nice guy who was a newscaster many years ago. I remember him, and she said horrible things about him since. I mean, horrible, horrible things, called him bad names. I have no idea who this woman is. I have absolutely no idea. The whole thing is ridiculous that this is even a case. This should never have happened. But again, this is sponsored by the Democrats. It's another case, all sponsored by, it's a demeaning kind of a thing, and that's what they want to do. It's called election interference. And yeah, I'm going to go to it, and I'm going to explain. I don't know who the hell she is. I have no idea. They called me up years ago, and they said, do you know about this woman 25 or 30 years ago? She doesn't even know the date, the time, the month, the season. She has no idea. And if you read it, if you watch, take a look at the Anderson Cooper interview of her. And if you take a look at that, Trump is so innocent, but we have been given a very unfair trial there too. I don't get very fair trials in New York.
One of the things that E. Jean Carroll's lawyers are also going to bring up at this trial in their closing argument as they talk to the jury about punitive damages, they're just going to say, play this clip. Exhibit A, you just saw. Exhibit B, which could be Exhibit B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Donald Trump's stump speech, his campaign speech, has a number of beats, right, that we cover here on the MeidasTouch Network. You know, he praises Viktor Orban, the wannabe authoritarian leader of Hungary. He says that this is the most powerful man in Europe, which he's not. They have like 20% plus inflation in Hungary, the entire GDP annually. It's like $180 billion less than many American corporations have, but that's who Donald Trump praises. Trump praises Kim Jong-un. He praises China's President Xi and says President Xi's right out of Hollywood. He's very, very strong. Then Donald Trump attacks NATO. Donald Trump then does this weird thing where he tells this story where he tries to mock trans people. And he goes, and he's trying to, I guess, copy women lifting weights and trying to compete with each other. He does this very strange voice. That's part of his speech. He plays the song from the J6th Choir, a group of insurrectionists who he made a musical with, and he's copyrighted the music and sells the music, and he plays that song. He calls the insurrectionists hostages, and he calls on President Biden, who he calls Joe. He goes, Joe, release the hostages, Joe, release the hostages. He attacks the FBI and the DOJ. Then they play a bunch of really weird music where he then talks about how horrible he thinks the United States of America is. And then as part of his speech, part of the way he engages with the voters is he mocks E. Jean Carroll, the victim who he was found to have raped. That's part of his campaigning. Like, that's what he goes around the country and talks about, mocking her. And I'll just give you one example right here. Donald Trump's not even being asked this question. So arguably, you can say in the press conference, well, he's doing a press conference, so there are many questions coming up, which is ridiculous, but sure, whatever. But here, Donald Trump on his own brings this up, and he talks about his victim. Play this clip.
Case, they went after me, and they would have done it more, except it's backfired. It's backfired. And if I didn't run, or if I was in 5th place or something, I would have had no indictments. This is all political stuff, including the women's stuff. The Bergdorf Goodman. I meet a woman outside of Bergdorf Goodman. I took her upstairs to a changing booth. It was all made up. And you know who's financing it? Reid Hoffman, their #1 political donor. Reid Hoffman, big fat slob.
And finally, what E. Jean Carroll's lawyers are going to share with the jury in the upcoming defamation trial is, of course, that so-called town hall. What they're going to say to the jury is just, in May, E. Jean Carroll had just cleared her name. She received a judgment from a jury sitting exactly where you are, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who found that Donald Trump sexually assaulted E. Jean Carroll and found that Donald Trump defamed her. It was a sad day, but it was a day where E. Jean Carroll got her name back. She got her name back, and she found her power that Donald Trump had taken away from her for so long. And as she was thinking about this with all of these emotions, having to sit there, having to share these horrible details and intimate details of her life, she then learns that Donald Trump's going to be holding a town hall with CNN. And Donald Trump then goes on, and one of the main topics that he talks about over and over again is defaming E. Jean Carroll, who a jury just found that he engaged in the most heinous acts imaginable. And my client, E. Jean Carroll, sat there, and everything came falling apart because of his conduct and what he did. Play the tape. Play it.
Usually you leave office, you say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to back home. I'm back home to my family and everything. I'm going to be resigned. My poll numbers went up, and they went up with the other fake charge, too. Because what's happening is they're doing this for election interference. This woman, I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. I had a picture taken years ago with her and her husband, nice guy, John Johnson. He was a newscaster, very nice man. She called him an ape. Happens to be African American. Called him an ape. The judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things. But with her, they could put in anything. Access,
this
Hollywood.
This was a jury of 9 people who found you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I...
And after Donald Trump gets hit with a massive judgment for his conduct, and Donald Trump's waived asserting certain affirmative defenses because he never pled them, he never even put them in the pleading paper, which is basically like a check the box thing if you want to assert defenses. Donald Trump was late on deadlines. Donald Trump did not disclose experts on time or didn't provide proper disclosures. When he did disclose them, Donald Trump didn't file objections at the proper time. It was just error after error after error, which he then complains and whines about. It's his own conduct which will be adding more punitive damages. And as we've been talking about it on the show, he then goes around this tour. I call him the Pied Piper of whining, because he goes around the country, wreaks havoc, and then just whines and acts like a loser. It's a loser tour. Loser Palooza, Donald Trump's Loser Palooza tour of whining and crying and playing the victim while victimizing people like E. Jean Carroll. He only has himself to blame for his conduct and his behavior, but he wants to whine and continue to act like he's the one who's the victim. And that's just simply disgusting. But justice is here. As we said, justice is coming, and justice is here. We're in 2024. We will see Donald Trump lose this defamation trial big. And the closing argument will look similar to what I just shared with you. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2 million subscribers thanks to your support. And if you like the journalism we do here, you can go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch to support the growth of this network, since we don't have outside investors here. Thank you so much for watching and have an excellent day.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.